Hi everyone, and welcome to Real Life Talks. I'm your host, Yvonne Heath, author of the book Love Your Life to Death, and founder of the I Just Showed Up movement. So joining me today, I'm so delighted to have Wanda Minnings. Hello, Wanda.
Hi, Yvonne.
I am so excited that you're here. You have such an important message. I'm very passionate about it. So let's start with going back, your history and where you worked and what brought you to what you're doing today.
Okay, so I moved to this area in North Simcoe County about not quite 3 years ago. And I heard a message on the weekend at the church that I just went to for the first time about the demographics about the seniors population in Simcoe County from the 2016 census, and how Aurelia and area was going to be running a pilot project for addressing social isolation for seniors.
Right.
And they were looking for a volunteer coordinator. I put my hand up, and that was...
You were the volunteer coordinator.
I became it, yes.
Yes. Excellent. Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah, my husband teases that I was probably the only one.
Yeah. honey, I got the position. Yes, then they're all saying, hey, someone took it. That's great.
Right.
Yes, and so you are the volunteer coordinator for...
It's the Parish Outreach to Seniors program. And what we do is we visit seniors in their homes, regardless of whether that's their home, like their house home, or whether it's a nursing or a retirement home. And we match, my job is to match trained visitors, and I'll talk about trained, what that really means.
Right, yes.
Train my visitors with a senior, and they would go and visit them once a week for about an hour or so, and to just establish a social contact with them.
Well, that's amazing. And so why would people need someone to come and visit them once a week?
Sure. So initially, the statistics and the program was set up because there was a high prevalence in the 2016 census that this demographic was indicating that they were isolated, that they were finding themselves detached from their community and those activities in the community, and people had passed on in their lives, or they had moved out of the family home and downsized, and they were in a new environment, and it was hard. It's harder to make friendships, and so the program here, and this is the pamphlet.
Yes.
Is for meeting those kinds of people. So what ended up happening was, as our volunteers went out, and by the way, our volunteer training, I do an interview with all of our volunteers. They fill out a lengthy questionnaire as to why they want to, why they're drawn to this, and then they come to a full-day training session. We partner with Alzheimer's, CNIB, some of the other service providers that are there, using a curriculum that's been around for about 30 years. And so it's, and then they do 3 reference checks through the screening committee at the parish, and also a vulnerable sector police check. And once all of those pieces are together, I only take care of the training and the interviews, but once all of those pieces come together, then I get the go-ahead that this volunteer is ready to visit with seniors.
Right.
So that's exactly what happened, but what we found was that seniors are not all isolated and lonely, and a term that we used often was shut-ins. And although that can be the case, you don't have to be a senior to experience loneliness or isolation.
Sure, absolutely.
Or anything like that. So although our program's been going on for almost 3 years now, and the people, the visitors and the seniors who I matched initially, they're still visiting. We asked for about a 6-month commitment, but what's ended up happening is we've learned that seniors have other needs, and they're not all isolated, and many of them still drive, and they're very active in the community. So we're addressing one part of their life, but it's really just opened up a Pandora's box of all of the other wonderful things that seniors are asking now us to do. But within our parish and within the church, that's not what we're doing in this program. So I'm going out now talking to people like you, talking as much as I can, to listen, actually less talking and more listening. I want to know what all of the feedback is, what people are really wanting. They may not want someone to come into their home and visit every week.
Right, of course. Yeah, we all have different needs, and we all have different, what would be important to us. That's very interesting, yes.
And that was a big part of the feedback. So visitor goes to visit the senior, first week, second week, third week. By the 6th week, they're going, okay,
what's new?
Let's get out of the house. You know, it's not so interesting. Our volunteers don't drive, so we do not have any insurance or coverage for transporting people. But there's nothing stopping them from meeting at the mall, for meeting down at the lake and going for walks, for going shopping together, and for going for walks and all different things. So it's been a really exciting time because they've ended up becoming part of the family, an extension of the family. Yeah, and we found that the grown children, so the adults in the family, are reaching out now to the volunteers. They may not live in this community anymore. Many of them live in the city, and so they're touching base with the volunteer. So it's been really rewarding.
Wow, that's so incredible. And so just going back, when I wrote my book, and I thought, I talked about our elderly population, and why have things changed so much? And the truth is that our elderly used to live among us. Right, there were not nursing homes and you retirement homes. Your grandparents lived with you, your parents, and everybody lived multi-generational homes. So there wasn't this social isolation. Everyone was together, and people didn't live in different countries, across the country, so far away. So our needs have changed in society, and these kinds of programs I don't think we've quite caught up enough. We need more of this, don't we?
We really do, and it's hard now because, like you said, we just live in a society where everyone has their own set of doors, their front door, their back door, and those aren't shared living spaces.
That's right.
In many cases. And we're seeing more and more people stay in their own home, and that Stats Canada has reported that is the #1 wish of anybody, is to just remain in their own home. Moving is hard regardless, and not everybody wants to do it. So it opens up the question now, and when our volunteers go in, if the senior needs a little extra support, how do they do that? It's not something we would be able to provide, but it's sort of that broader question for everyone to answer. As I get closer to that part in my life where maybe retirement comes, is that what else will I need to stay in the home that's not going to cost a lot of money, etc. Nursing homes, we have a lot of, I'd never been in a nursing home before I started this program.
Oh my goodness, really? Yes. Wow. See, I just have to say, it's funny because when you're a nurse, you don't even realize that. I've been in more nursing homes than I can count, and it would be kind of intimidating, I bet, when you first come in.
Well, I have someone that is very close to me that I met through this program, and this person had to move to a nursing home last summer, and I was very upset initially by that. I found that was a really negative, I was just thinking, oh no, this was we're going in the wrong direction.
Right.
Well, fast forward to now, 8 or 9 months later, they're thriving. Oh, all the holidays are celebrated. I've been there for Christmas. I've been there for breakfast, lunches, and dinners. I've been there when they've had to go to hospital for a longer period, and then how they're welcomed back. I know the roommates now, and I know the regulars, and it is a community. And
wonderful.
I have nothing but praise for the people who work in, who run, and who are really become a family.
Yes.
For the seniors who live in there, and it's just been so that's another area where I listen and try to learn and try to add value. But they're wonderful communities. The question is, how do we continue to build those for those people who need them, who can't live on their own or don't have their own homes, or they need additional support 24 hours a day, because statistically the numbers say there aren't going to be enough spaces. So
yeah, there's all kinds of things that it's a whole Pandora's box is right, because many people will want to stay in their home. So how can we best support them because it takes a village, right? It takes many people. And a statistic that I often share is from Pallium Canada, who their mission is for every Canadian to have access to wonderful palliative care. Okay. The statistic they share is that at end of life, and I believe in long-term illness or whatever, formal caregivers will be available about 10% of the time or less. Now that's a big statistic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so what that big aha moment is, 90% is up to our community. So how can we as a community become that village?
Exactly. And I've also experienced that people are afraid to go into other people's homes.
Right.
So there's been lots of wonderful people come forward for the volunteer training, and through the course of that, they do become afraid, or they just start to really think, what does that mean? I'm going into someone's home, and then all of the what ifs happen.
So they're nervous about what?
What if
they're accused of stealing something?
There,
sure.
that's the number one.
It is? Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing is, people may have dementia, they may have mental health issues, so they're just afraid of being sued. We live in a society where, you know, if somebody is not feeling safe with somebody, and so that's never happened. I reached out to the Toronto agency through the Catholic Church that I'm part of, through the diocese, and they haven't experienced that. And interestingly enough, my mother, she lived to be almost 94, independently in Toronto, downtown, in an apartment.
Good for her.
And she started volunteering in her 80s, and it was actually under this program, because I remember her telling me she would go to visit a lady and she would stop, you know, walk through the mall on the way there and pick up, you know, usually something that this lady needed grocery-wise.
Yeah.
And she wasn't afraid of that, and there was never any issue, but that's a real concern, and I don't ever dismiss that if someone feels that way. But for me, I would rather take that risk.
Me too.
I know there's a risk to slip in the shower, to drive on the highway.
There's a risk with everything.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
It's true. Yeah.
So it's not for everybody. So what I'm really hoping is that as we start to look for other opportunities where we can meet the needs of people who are seniors in our communities, is what can other people do? What are some things that others can do that don't involve going to people's homes? In Britain, they have an amazing program called Silver Line, and that's a phone service. So people buddy up by telephone, so they never do meet.
Yeah.
And that's been working really, really well for a long time.
Well, they could even go on Skype or Face, right? All you need to do is show someone how to FaceTime once, or Skype or Zoom or something.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people think maybe if people don't have the income, the disposable income, or if they're elderly, that they don't know how to use computers. They don't have computers, but they do have computers.
Many do, for sure.
The Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, who we partnered with in the summer to run a crockpot club for seniors.
Oh yes, I love that.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. They also have a program that I'm considering running with them, and it's on cybersecurity for seniors.
Excellent.
Where they use high school students
well, they
in the high school lab setting. Perhaps even the community college, and we've got the university here too, where they can buddy up with someone and start to do that so they can communicate with their grandchildren at university and their people who. So The opportunity is really fast and furious. It's about not doing too much too quickly and making sure it meets the need. We did find that this Crockpot Club for seniors.
Yeah, so tell us about that.
Yeah, so this was an off-the-shelf program that's been running across Ontario through a bunch of different health units, but we partnered with our program, and we had 2 businesses sponsor it here. So I'll shout out to Leacock Retirement Home and to Mundell's, who paid for it. Yeah, that's amazing. We had this very diverse group of people from the community, because our seniors do not need to be associated with our church. Like, that's only our volunteers, because we hold the screening. Right. Okay. So we had this great group of seniors, and there were husbands and wives. There were people who did cook. It wasn't a learn to cook program. Okay. Every senior came and they got a crock pot, a brand new crock pot, the first week. Every we had a 6-week program, 2 hours each. The first hour was bit of education, maybe reading food labels, because we had someone with a nursing background. We talked about bring in your meds and what foods you should stay away from, you know, with grapefruit, with certain medications, etc. So we always had an expert who talked for the first hour. Could be on food handling and safety, all kinds of different things. And the second half was roll up your sleeves, start chopping, and they all had, so the crock-pots stayed at home after the first day. Yep. And everybody every week had chopping boards and measuring cups and paring knives and everything they needed, and all the ingredients to make 2 recipes in their crock pot. So then they would get a big printout of those recipes, the nutritional value, and the price per serving, which was always around $4 a serving or less. Wow, that's they were reasonable. Like 4-portion crock pots, so enough for 4 meals. And everybody took the food home that they prepared in a Ziploc bag, and it was labeled, and they could throw it in the crock pot, and they could take an extra one and throw it in the freezer.
I want to go to that program.
Yeah, we're going to run it.
Awesome.
We're going to run it again once the snow melts.
What a fun thing to do, though, right? Because, and I've heard many people complain cooking for themselves or just 2 people, etc. But you said 4 portions in a little crock pot and put some in the freezer, and there's just, it is nice to get ideas from other people. Yes. Right?
It really is.
What a great program.
And we, so myself and the agency that holds the contract for our program is the Catholic Family Life Office in Barrie. Okay. So the coordinator there, a great lady, Amanda Fellows, she or I would always pre-cook in our crock pots whatever the recipe was. So not only did they prepare it, but we always got to eat it. And there's nothing that builds community better than having a meal together that's healthy, nutritious. And on the last week, we invited the funders, we invited the mayor came, the MPP came, and we just had this huge party. And a real celebration, and they could invite their friends and families, and the newspaper came and did a huge picture of them, and they all had these aprons with the name on it that they got to keep, and they had their picture and the story in the paper. I just recently touched base with all of our Crock-Pot members in December, just between Christmas and New Year's, just to reach out and see how they were doing. I don't know these people; they're not our visitors. Right. This is a new group of seniors, and they have kept in touch. And I didn't know that. So great. So they've continued to meet together, and just so that's what everybody wants is just more friends. Something to do and to get together, and that was the interest for that group of seniors. So, you know, in my ideas box, there's so many of these different kinds of examples. Could be writing life stories.
Yes, we actually, in Huntsville, they had the high school students, and I'll go back to the point of what your mom was doing and high school students, but they all have 40 hours of volunteer,
Yes.
right? They need to do 40 hours of volunteering. Wouldn't it be wonderful to connect them? And they had a couple people in our community organized that the grade 11s came to the nursing home and they wrote legacy stories. And it was whatever stories the seniors wanted to tell them. And many of those students ended up going to visit those seniors on their own time. Why? Because they became friends. Seniors are just, they're people. They're not, it's not like teenagers, adults, and seniors. We're all on the continuum of life. They actually have a lot more life experience and a lot of amazing stories to share.
It's true. And
so many stories.
I know when we moved up here, it was just after my husband and I each lost a parent, and then that was it. So so we didn't have any grandparents in our family, and we went through that period. And what I found is that my connection with seniors gives me that generational, that richness. There's stories.
Absolutely.
And you know I repeat myself. My kids and my family tell me that.
They let you know.
Seniors do that too. And they love to talk about themselves. So a lot of what we do in our program is learn to ask open-ended questions. So those are questions that can't be answered with yes or no.
That's right.
So that they can talk.
We all want to hear, we all want to be validated and share our stories, right? And they're wonderful stories to hear if we're just willing to listen.
They really are. They really are. And it's for everybody. I always think fondly of this one woman who phoned me. She was in her 90s, and she and her husband had downsized, moved from this big house in the country into the city. And they were in an apartment, and she was feeling isolated and out of touch. So she said she'd like to have a lady come and visit her and just have a cup of tea, because her husband wasn't, you know, it was a bit hard to have discussions all the time. He wasn't filling that need for her.
Right.
So I went over and visited, and I sat in their living room, and the TV was on, and husband was watching TV, and the wife and I were having conversation. I was, you know, talking to her, finding out about her interests and all of that. And before I left, the TV was off, and the husband was part of the conversation.
Oh,
and he at
beautiful.
first didn't want anything to do with having someone come into his home, because not just for our visitors, for seniors too, that's very scary. It can be. And
absolutely.
So I ended up matching them with a couple who are our trained visitors, and that couple was the four of them ended up just having a great time together.
What a great story. What a great story. I love that. And that's just taking that initiative to say, okay, well, there's a husband and wife, and maybe we can pair people up. And isn't that, there's so many possibilities. And I want to go back to the fact that your mom in her 80s volunteered. And I had a gentleman on my show once, Colin Wackett, who was the volunteer of the year, and he was in his 80s. And a lot of people think that they can't volunteer, they don't have anything to offer. And I love this line, said, we don't all need to lift the 10-pound bags of potatoes. We all have a gift, and guess what? Maybe your gift is just being present and listening. And that's what so many people are missing in their lives.
I have a background in running the literacy networks here in Simcoe, Muskoka, and the motto for the Ontario Literacy Coalition is each one, teach one. And I say that with my seniors and my volunteers, each one, reach one.
Reach one.
Just one person, and that makes the world of difference, and it's so important. And I think that's the simplicity and the beauty of human connections. So it's about making the time, shutting off social media. I too need to put my iPad away after dinner and make phone calls. Go out and have a pre-visit with someone, and it has to be an active choice, because it doesn't come naturally. We've all been now conditioned to turn on technology.
Absolutely. So put a little reminder in your phone. Turn off my phone, right? But I always say to people, I know we're all busy and we're on this treadmill and we're all in our lane, so put a little reminder in your phone. Oh yes, call grandma, call neighbor, check, go have coffee. And so with these programs, so how would people, this program, the Parish Outreach to Seniors, so how do people connect with this, or what is the next? How do we get people involved, Wanda? I want everyone to watch and to connect with you.
So we do have a phone number dedicated to this, and I'm happy to read that off if that's appropriate.
So
it's through the Guardian Angels Church in Orillia, and the way you can reach me is leave a message at 705-326 2849.
Okay.
And I'm extension 135, and I will call you back.
Right.
And that's how we reach people. We've had Foodland Grocery Store, for example. They deliver groceries to people who can't get out, and they've put these in with their groceries too.
I love that.
It's about not just our program, but connecting a lot of the great work and the great agencies and the great programs that exist in the city for people who were seniors. And you know, seniors, we visit seniors who are as young as 60 and as old as in their hundreds, because as we know, we don't see anymore in the newspaper or on TV. I remember when news was someone was turning 100, and that was on, you know.
Big deal, yes.
And now it's so prevalent that we don't see that anymore.
No.
So whether you're a volunteer, whether you're a senior, age is not a restriction, so call us.
So to talk about getting these services or to be a volunteer, people call that number, right?
Yes, and I'll be running.
Call Wanda. She'll give you the information.
We'll be running volunteer training again in the spring, but I run it throughout the year based on need.
Yes, well, and I think people don't even realize how much being a volunteer and just even making a little difference, an act of kindness for someone, fills your own heart, doesn't it?
It really does.
It really does. And I can't believe that this conversation went so quickly. Did I told you it would go quickly. Yes, I so commend you for all of the work that you do. This is so important. No senior should feel isolated and alone. And here's the thing, is it really doesn't take much to make a difference, does it?
Not at all, and they're so appreciative.
Yes. So thank you for all that you do, Wanda. I hope many people call you. We shared the number, and we will also post it.
Excellent, thank you.
Keep doing all your good work, and I know we'll chat again.
Great, thanks so much, Yvonne. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. So this has been Real Life Talks, the show where we learn to talk about, plan, and prepare for life, and learn how to just show up for each other, be empowered and resilient. So, if you want to be able to just show up for yourself and others, my call to action is always plan your life, plan your death, and then just love your life to death. And always bring your own tambourine to the party. Thanks. Bye for now.